China's Evergrande, the world's most indebted real estate developer, is on the verge of collapse, a collapse that would have had a huge impact on global financial markets. At the end of August this year, two pieces of news about Evergrande drew international attention. First, on August 16th, Evergrande was investigated by Xi Jinping's authorities for suspected violations of information disclosure laws and regulations. Secondly, on August 17th, Evergrande filed for bankruptcy protection in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York to save itself. Why did Evergrande go to the U.S. to seek protection on the second day of the investigation by Xi Jinping's administration? What is the secret behind it? In this episode, we will explore this topic. First, let's take a look at the perception of Evergrande in the eyes of the Chinese people. Fans all want me to talk about Evergrande, who sells homes. You're wrong, they don't sell homes. They sell pies. Other people bake pies to sell. They draw pies to sell. They draw a good parcel of land and apartments, then sell them to homeowners in a pre-sales fashion. They draw a heavenly palace and sell the palace in advance. When you get the property, it can't shelter you from the wind and rain, but only leave you in a chill. It doesn't even give you a chance to jump off the building because you don't have a building to jump off from. They go bankrupt, but you must pay the debts. If you don't pay, you become a deadbeat. Look at the debt of Evergrande. It's 2.4 trillion yuan. The number is longer than my cell phone number. Suddenly, I feel that if a poor person owes money to other people, he acts like a grandfather. But the richest man in the world, Xu Jinping, is the grandfather of the grandfather. He is more senior than the ancients. Do you know what 2.4 trillion yuan means? As an ordinary person with a monthly salary of 2,000 to 3,000 yuan, even if I don't eat, drink, or take any break, I would have to work for 60 million years, from the Jurassic Age to the new century. Still, I may not be able to pay off the debt. If Evergrande wants to pay off its debt, it will have to wait for the Earth to reach its end. And if you want to live in an Evergrande home, you'll have to wait for the human race to reach its extinction. The above talk show, while giving people a good laugh, is also heartbreaking. Evergrande has a total debt of 2.43 trillion renminbi, or $330 billion, so far, and has filed for bankruptcy in the US. It has a total of 1.62 million houses all over China that are still in a rotten-tailed state. It means unfinished, incomplete buildings. This means that 1.62 million families, about 5 to 6 million people, are still waiting for Evergrande to deliver the properties that they have already paid for in advance. In fact, the real victims of Evergrande's bankruptcy are the Chinese people.
We bought this home with the money we scraped together, and now after knowing that this home is going to become a rotten-tailed, unfinished building, I ask what's going to happen to the whole family. I feel that I don't have the courage to live anymore. I want to jump off this building. My husband and I drove all the way to the building and counted the floors one by one. We want to see the floor we bought, and we're looking forward to moving in soon. But today they stopped working, and we're trying to approach the developer about resuming work, but they keep lying to us.
Under Chapter 15 of the U.S. Bankruptcy Code, U.S. bankruptcy courts are allowed to recognize bankruptcy or debt restructuring proceedings involving foreign countries, while non-U.S. companies can use Chapter 15 of the Bankruptcy Code to prevent creditors from filing lawsuits against the petitioner in the United States or freezing its assets, buying it more time to restructure its debts. Evergrande mentioned the ongoing restructuring procedures in Hong Kong and the British Cayman Islands in the application document submitted to the Manhattan Court of the United States on August 17th. The company proposed a Chapter 15 hearing on September 20th. According to the Wall Street Journal, Evergrande's application for bankruptcy protection in the United States will seek court approval for $19 billion in debt restructuring. Court approval of the debt restructuring would make the agreement legally binding in the United States and put an end to any possible disputes over the plan in the United States. Much of Evergrande's $19 billion offshore bonds are governed by U.S. law. In the United States, companies in trouble have two options. One is bankruptcy liquidation, and the other is bankruptcy protection. Evergrande filed for bankruptcy protection this time, but did not enter bankruptcy liquidation. Therefore, legally speaking, Xi Jinping's personal assets have not entered the disposal process. China's creditors are also closely watching every move of Xi Jinping, the owner of Evergrande. Evergrande's operation has created a black hole of over 600 billion renminbi, or $82 billion, which will never be paid. Nearly 1 million homeowners of rotten-tailed buildings have been rendered homeless. Tens of thousands of small and medium-sized enterprises that Evergrande owes money to are on the verge of bankruptcy, and it has dragged down the entire industrial chain with millions of employees who have suffered pay cuts and lost their jobs. Everyone says that Evergrande has committed serious crimes and that Mr. Xi should be arrested and put in jail immediately. But let me tell you a solid fact. From the legal point of view, Mr. Xi's operation is legal. He established Evergrande for 23 years. Through maniacal financing and wild expansion, he built Evergrande into the #1 trillion renminbi real estate enterprise in China. At the same time, however, he made hundreds of billions of wealth legally for himself through the planning of the top international financial and legal teams, and through the dividend distribution and related transactions. He has transferred the wealth overseas and set up an offshore family trust. In this way, no matter how the creditors trace back, according to the relevant laws, they can't affect Mr. Xu's personal wealth of trillions of dollars. A big joke. 1.65 million sets of homes became rotten-tailed or unfinished. More than 5.5 million homeowners face homelessness. With a registered capital of 3.9 billion yuan, he owes 2.5 trillion yuan, and he, a Chinese real estate enterprise, ran to the US to apply for bankruptcy protection to protect his personal assets. There's no justice. What's outrageous is that he left all his 2.5 trillion yuan of debts in the domestic market, China, to us, the small leagues, the ones who bought the homes. The mystery of this, I tell you, is first, he didn't know any money. He doesn't know these 2.5 trillion debts, but us homebuyers do. These 2.5 trillion debts are borrowed from the bank willingly by us homebuyers. We have lost 2.5 trillion and we must pay it back. If you don't pay back, just wait and see. Immediately, someone will come to get you and deal with you. What's more, his following enterprises, contractors, material suppliers, builders, the poor people, the poor workers, and the poor construction team, he used technical divorce to operate his business, moving the assets overseas under his personal name. In the end, you can't do anything about it. This gigantic debt load is dumped on the Chinese people. So is this joke funny? Regarding Evergrande's filing for bankruptcy protection in the US, there is a strong possibility that Xi's political rival, Zheng Qinghong, is taking advantage of the fact that Xi is in a full-blown crisis in the domestic and diplomatic arenas to stage a duel with him. From the history of Evergrande's development, we can see that the real backstage boss of Evergrande is Zheng Qinghong, the partner of former party leader Jiang Zemin, who passed away in November 2022. His partner, Zheng Qinghong, a former vice president of the Chinese Communist Party, is the core of the senior patriarchs of the Communist Party and enjoys a wide network of personal connections. If Evergrande files for bankruptcy protection in the United States, its local assets may be protected. In the future, if other creditors want to seize Evergrande's assets to offset their debts, they will have no means to do so. To a certain extent, Evergrande has first preserved its assets in the United States to avoid liquidation, and it can also avoid claims from China. This is, in essence, a way of preserving the assets that Zheng Qinghong and other powerful families of the CCP that Xi Jinping has transferred overseas, leaving Evergrande's mess in the hands of Xi Jinping. On September 5th, the Nikkei News described the recent meeting of the CCP in Beidaihe in this way. Now 84, Zheng remains influential within the party and enjoys a wide network of personal connections. Some say that in the wake of Jiang's death, Zheng has a bigger role to play. At this meeting, Xi received unexpectedly harsh criticism from the elders. According to information that has begun to trickle out, Xi vented his frustration. pointing fingers at his three predecessors, Deng Xiaoping, Jiang, and Hu. All the issues that were left by the previous three leaders are on my shoulders, he is believed to have said. I have spent the last decade tackling them, but they remain unresolved. Am I to blame? At almost the same time as the bankruptcy filing in the US, Evergrande announced that Ding Yumei was referred to as a third-party independent of the company and its affiliates. She wasn't referred to as the spouse of Xu Jiaying as she had been previously. The previous announcements were directly referred to as Mrs. Xu. Regarding this rumor, the main concern of the market is whether Mr. Xu is circumventing his debts by divorcing his wife. The Hurun Research Institute previously released a 2019 Hurun list of women entrepreneurs, which showed that Ding Yumei, the wife of boss Xu, ranked 26 with a fortune of more than $2.3 billion. Under the CCP's regime, business celebrities are often the white gloves of the CCP's powerful and wealthy. Therefore, the assets transferred by Mr. Xu may not be enjoyed only by his own family members. The boss of Evergrande, Xu Jiaying, was born in a rural village in Henan province without any prominent family background. He founded Evergrande in Shenzhen in 1996. After that, he quickly expanded his business from Shenzhen to the whole country because he hooked up with the Jiang faction, led by Jiang and Zeng. In just 2 decades, Evergrande has become one of the world's top 500 enterprises, and Xu Jiaying has become the richest man in China. The path taken by Evergrande is one of the greatest wonders in the history of human enterprise. It's a typical demonstration of how the powerful families of the CCP suck blood from the Chinese people through their white gloves. White gloves generally refers to a middleman or outfit that launders dirty or corrupt money under a seemingly legitimate front, dirty hands concealed by a pair of white gloves. In August 2020, the Xi administration set 3 red lines for real estate developers and divided the offenders into 4 classes according to the degree of violation. The most serious red line is the ban on new loans to real estate companies if all 3 red lines are violated. Evergrande hit all 3 red lines and was unable to continue to obtain loans from banks in China, and immediately fell into a financial predicament with a cash crunch.
Of course, the backdrop to this story is the struggle between Xi Jinping and Zheng Qinghong. I've heard that the Australian legal scholar Yuan Hongbin has also talked about this lately. He said that it is widely rumored in the Beijing officialdom that the blown out of Evergrande was a result of Xi Jinping personally lighting the fuse, that Xi personally ordered that financial institutions not to be allowed to continue to lend money to Evergrande. Xi's purge of Xu Jiaying was in fact aimed at Zheng Qinghong.
In truth, for a company like Evergrande, I think it's very unlikely that it would have grown to such a large size without the support of the rich and powerful behind it. In fact, most people in the system know that Evergrande's background is Zheng Qinghong. In 2015, Zheng Qinghong's son, Zheng Wei, hosted a party in Australia. Xu Jiaying lent his mansion there to Zheng Wei to host the party. Xu Jiaying also served as a director of the Federation of Cultural Industries in Hong Kong at the time. And the big man behind Hong Kong's cultural industry is Zheng Qinghuai, Zheng Qinghong's younger brother. Zheng Qinghuai was the special inspector of the Ministry of Culture of the CCP in Hong Kong, and he was one of the most powerful and influential people in Hong Kong. It was against this background that Xu Jiaying hooked up with the Zheng family, and he expanded very quickly under these circumstances, leading to his current state. So, can Xi Jinping take the blame? Obviously not. On August 30th, China's Tencent News disclosed that Xu Jiaying is currently living in Guangzhou and isn't allowed to meet with outsiders at will. Unlike in the past when he could be approached directly for a signature, now, if an outside company needs Xu's signature, it will usually be forwarded by a staff member on his side for signature after filing a formal report. Evergrande announced its financial report for 2021 and 2022 in July 2023. In these 2 years, Evergrande suffered a total loss of 812 billion renminbi, or $111 billion, and its debt rose from $270 billion to $330 billion. What kind of notion is this? If we compare it with the foreign debt of a country, Argentina's foreign debt is $275 billion, which is less than that of Evergrande. After the Russian invasion of Ukraine, its foreign debt dropped to $357.9 billion, which is about the size of Evergrande's. The debt of one company, Evergrande, is about the same. The debt of Evergrande alone is comparable to that of Russia and Argentina.
It was once claimed to be the most influential project in northeastern China, Shenyang Evergrande Culture and Tourism City, with a project size of about 1,200 mu, or about 198 acres. It integrates the functions of recreation, residence, culture, business travel, accommodation, and so on. The businessman originally planned to build the largest culture and tourism resort in northeastern China. But the reality is, most of the projects here have halted the construction. Today, we too want to dive into this place to see the real situation of the buildings here.
This side of the advertising board is still there, but now we see the construction of all of these homes is suspended, and not a single worker is in sight. The advertisement still reads Shenyang Evergrande Culture and Tourism City, a cultural and tourism resort dedicated to the world, with a down payment of 20,000 yuan to live in a finely renovated home, at 6,000 yuan per square meter for the renovation, Western-style townhomes with a down payment of 20,000 yuan.
Ordinary people are played and manipulated by these capitals. Take a look at what the advertisement is. Once in a lifetime, live in a Western-style townhome.
We have now come to the project department of Shenyang Evergrande Cultural Tourism City. We've seen this project department, and it's the most utterly deserted. There's not a single person, and the doors of the project department are open, and it should have been deserted for a long time. This is the front entrance that has many cameras. Well, what's the point? There's no one inside. The building is what it is. What do you want the homeowners to do? The buildings have been roofed, but once they are roofed, the project is over, and there's no one inside. All construction has been halted.
See these villas behind me? At the beginning of 2017, someone paid 5 million yuan, that is $680,000 per unit, and bought all of them, a total of 27 villas. But the individual didn't sell them because they thought that the price of the property would keep going up. We are moving up the steps one by one. After 7 or 8 years, the price has dropped from $680,000 to $250,000, with each villa being 308 square meters in total, having a terrace on the top and a 200 square meter garden on the ground floor. Why was the price so high at the time? It was because there was a golf course here at the time. After many years, the golf course was deserted and the price of the properties fell too, just like a waterfall. The price includes a property that's within the boundary of Beijing, no need to go through checkpoints, and each household is given 150 square meters of vegetable patch. Look at the scenery of the park. It'll be even more beautiful in the future after it's all finished.
In addition to banks and foreign investors, a large portion of Evergrande's debts are owed to the construction companies and other business partners, totaling about $140 billion.
Evergrande owes me nearly 4 million RMB, or US $550,000. It's bullshit to say that this money doesn't matter to me. This money can at least buy two-bedroom apartments in the southwest of Beijing outside the 5th Ring Road, in cash. What can we do as a design company? Going to court and securing our debt is also a matter of luck. Maybe there is a centralized enterprise or state-owned enterprise willing to take him over, and maybe the money owed to us will be given to us at a discount of 30 or 40%, but otherwise there's no chance at all. When it first happened, I was angry. I worked so hard for this project, but I didn't even get a penny. What happened later? If I become obsessed with complaints or I keep bringing the whole team down, I won't get anything. How would a design company PK with a real estate company that's at a carrier's level? Even Even a big company like Guangtian can be dragged into bankruptcy by Evergrande, not to mention a design company like us. It's the same for all the other companies, whether it is the design company, subcontractors, furniture companies, or its chain of suppliers. So if we now encounter a project like this, namely one that looks big with a high profit margin but poor payment terms, unless you are inside that company with hardcore relationships, don't accept the project. You have no idea what situation you will get yourself into.
In the face of such a predicament, Evergrande has recently launched a program to offset its debts with properties, mainly targeting its 23 major suppliers. That is to say, the suppliers who are owed money by Evergrande Group can get Evergrande's properties, and Evergrande will use 30% of the property price to pay off the debt. And the creditors will have to pay cash to Evergrande Group for the remaining 70%. It's too shameless. They dare to propose such a shameless solution of settling debts with properties. Evergrande's creditors are really screwed. Evergrande is now in the predicament of insolvency and must put forward a proposal for settling debts with properties. But do you know how ridiculous this proposal is? For example, if Evergrande owes you $300,000, he will pay you with a home valued at more than $1 million. The value of $300,000 is to repay the debt, but the creditors have to give Evergrande an additional $700,000 to get the unit. So, if Evergrande owes you $3 million, it won't give you 3 homes, but rather it'll give you 10 units. You will have to pay Evergrande $7 million before getting the units. So Evergrande hasn't really repaid any debt, but instead you pay $7 million to buy those garbage units that haven't been built. It'll clear its inventory without any discount while harvesting a bunch of cash and taking care of its debt. It's 3 birds with 1 stone. Evergrande has really refreshed the limit of being shameless. It's so outrageous that I'm afraid even the most outlandish scriptwriters can't think of such a ridiculous plot. What will be the outcome of the Evergrande scandal? A Chinese political economist analyzed that Xi Jinping, for the sake of his power, can only protect the biggest creditor of Evergrande, the major banks in China, at the expense of other creditors, including the interests of the general public. When Evergrande, the real estate giant, is about to go bankrupt, there are 4 types of creditors: banks, foreign investors, upstream enterprises of real estate, and buyers of Evergrande's real estate projects. Of these 4 categories, the CCP will only protect the banks, while the other categories of creditors, including foreign investors, will be abandoned. Why? It is judged from the process of Evergrande's application for bankruptcy protection. Why does the CCP have to sacrifice even foreign investors? The CCP will protect the banks that are Evergrande's creditors. The CCP cannot let Evergrande's bankruptcy bring down the banks. In that case, the collapse of a few banks would destabilize the CCP because China's entire financial system is already very fragile. And the collapse of a few banks would cause shocks in the financial system and an earthquake in the economy. Evergrande has long been insolvent. To protect the banks, the CCP must first sacrifice other creditors of Evergrande and slowly write off those debts. The CCP will let Evergrande continue to live on. It will not leave Evergrande completely on its own. It has already stabilized those people who are creditors of Evergrande who bought Evergrande homes. The CCP won't allow the public to protest on the streets every day, and the CCP won't allow the banks to force Evergrande to pay the debts, so that Evergrande can maintain its existence as long as possible.
那中共呢也尽量不让银行对恒大逼债，好让这个恒大呢尽量维持下去。